Warning, the following podcast has been classified as insanely lucrative. Listener discretion is advised.
Times are changing, okay? It's not the same as it was a year ago. And I think a lot of those stories of people starting with $500 gi are probably people who started, a year ago.
Your attention, please. Listening to the AM/PM podcast may cause recurring revenue streams and unfair advantages over your competitors. Other side effects may include fatter wallets, fired bosses, and longer vacations. Listen at your own risk. Here's your host, seven-figure entrepreneur and online marketing madman, Manny Coates. Manny Coates.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the AM/PM podcast. My name is Manny Coates, and I will be your host. And this is the show where we discuss how to generate recurring revenue streams 24 hours per day during the AM and the PM, hence the name of the show. As a matter of fact, I was just doing a Periscope where I was showing all my early day samples, the stuff that I was potentially thinking about getting into with Amazon, right, back in November of last year, and never actually went forward with it. So that was kind of fun showing all that. And while showing these samples, guys, this whole time doing the Periscope, I was making money. How cool is that? Pretty cool, I think. So, as always, we have our Thursday Q&A. This is episode 2 of the Q&A. And of course, as always, I am joined by my Q&A co-host, awesome buddy, close friend, Guillermo Puyol. How are you doing, Guy?
I'm awesome. How are you doing, Manny?
I am doing phenomenal, but I'm even more excited to ask you my Manny question of the day for Guy. I know you always hate these, but they must be done.
They must be, right?
They must be done. So before we get into the 2 Q&A questions that you have selected for our listeners today, I have selected 2 questions for you, but we're only going to ask you one right now. Are you ready for your first question?
Ready as I'll ever be, I guess.
They're always very serious, so it's going to be good. But Guy, you're a very smart person. This is something that's been really bothering me as of late. But if vampires cannot see their reflections, right? Why is it, Guy, that they always have perfect hair?
If vampires cannot see the reflection, why do they have perfect hair?
Yeah, how do they get it like that?
Man, I think you stumped me.
What would you do? What would you do if you had to get ready for, you're going out on your anniversary with your wife and you couldn't use a mirror to get ready? How would you look without her help? And you just woke up after a long sleep in a coffin.
drool all over my face.
Yeah. Anyways, these are things that I wonder about. So you don't have an answer for me. Is that what you're saying?
No, man. I think you've officially stumped me.
All right. Guillermo is officially stumped. Perfect. All right. Well, maybe one of our listeners can post on our Facebook group and let us know how that's even possible. Maybe I'm missing something.
Guys, help me out on this one. I'm gonna be posting this Q&A. After you listen to it, go back and help me out with the answer. I have no clue how am I gonna fix my hair if I don't see like Braille? I mean, I don't know. Let's move on. Man.
All right. Question number 1 officially of the Q&A Thursday. This is podcast number 2 for Thursday Q&A, I believe. So let's do it.
Awesome. All right. So this one's coming from Daniel from your neck of the woods in California.
Cali.
It says, "Hi, Manny. I love your podcast and you are hilarious and cut straight to the point on your video periscopes. Keep going this way. Don't sugarcoat it. That's what I love about your content." Awesome. Are you paying these guys?
No, I wish I could pay more guys to say stuff like that. That'd be cool.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna have to slip somebody a $5 bill to say something nice about me every once in a while. Anyway, let's keep going. So my question is about starting capital. I'm in college and on a limited budget. Most places I have read on or listened to say I can get started in private label for $500 or less. But I asked you on your Periscopes the same question, and you said I would need more. But then you moved on to another question. Can you go over your thought process on this? Yeah, I actually remember that question. I think it was one of those nights that there's no questions, and then all of a sudden go and 50 questions pop up.
Yeah, that's the beauty of Periscope, right? It's like you're waiting there, it's live, and then for whatever reason their server, this is what I assume, right? Their server just doesn't submit stuff, and then it has to play catch up. And so I'm sitting there looking at the screen going, wow, nobody wants to talk to me. And then boom, 27 questions come in all at once. And then they literally are gone. Like in 2 seconds, I can't read them all.
And you cannot scroll.
No, you can't scroll.
That's a good question from Daniel.
That is a great question. And actually, for those of you that do not get on the Periscopes with me, it's probably one of the most common questions that we actually get. And maybe that's also why I answered it very quickly, because, it's asked so many times. It's asked pretty much every single time we have a Periscope by somebody. But it's a great question. How much money do you need to get into private label FBA, right? Selling stuff on Amazon FBA via private label. So I have flip-flopped on this. I will admit it, guys. And I'm not, I'm not too proud to admit that, I will flip-flop on stuff. If somebody presents data to me, or if I'm looking at data and I see that the data is no longer valid or it has changed for some reason, then I'm going to switch, right? What worked before might not work now. And I used to be of the mindset, especially because, I started my journey not too long ago, guys. This was like 4 months ago that I actually got into Amazon private label. And so I was learning what everybody else was teaching out there. And a lot of what was being taught was, hey, you can get started for $500. There's a lot of people that have done it for $500. Do this, and here's a interview and da-da-da-da, right? $500. So I'm thinking, okay, $500. And some people have said they started with $200. But times are changing, okay? It's not the same as it was a year ago. And I think a lot of those stories of people starting with $500, Guy, are probably people who started, a year ago. And I'm not saying that it can't be done. Of course it can be done. But it's just not as easy and it's not normal. So to answer your question, where would you need to be financially, to get something going? I know, Guy, you and I have talked about this off the podcast, and we agree on a lot of stuff, and then we have kind of our own ideas on how to approach this. But my thing is that I think you should have probably about $2,000 to get started and feel a little bit comfortable, and that's the lowest amount. That's what I think. Okay, so you got to ask yourself, if you cannot come up with $2,000, and again, let me preface this by saying, you shouldn't quit if you don't have $2,000. If you only have $500 and you want to give it a shot, go for it. But let me explain why I think $2,000 is a good number. $2,000 should be a number that most people can come up with somehow, right? You have $2,000 worth of assets that, stuff you can sell that you don't need to live, right? If you have a mountain bike that you use a couple times a year and it's worth $600, sell it. Try to get some money out of that. This is a business you're trying to build. If you have family and friends and you can borrow, get it. If you can get a bank loan, if you can get a cash advance on your credit card, whatever it is, try to get this initial seed money, this $2,000 to get going. Now, the way I look at it is this. About half of that $2,000 is going to be pay-per-click, to actually market and promote your product once you get it. And the other half, the $1,000 or so, is to get your initial inventory. And this is where it gets difficult, Guy, right? We're talking about $1,000 to get enough inventory to generate some sales and also get the initial review process going. I've always talked about, getting a good number of reviews. So figure maybe 25 to 50 units are going to automatically need to be used as loss leaders. Essentially, you're going to be giving them away at no profit and probably at a loss to you in order to get those reviews. Does that make sense so far, Guy?
Yeah.
And once you get going, let's just say, you got to do the math. If you only have $1,000 left over because you've set aside half of that, $1,000 for pay-per-click, I would probably say try to get about 300 units. If you can get 300 units, 50 of them for reviews, 250 to sell, then you should be okay for, trying to promote the product and pushing it for the first month. Now, this is totally different than the Manny Coats launch strategy that I talked about in podcast. What episode was that, Guy? Episode 20, I forget.
24, 25.
Yeah, you can see it at the ampmpodcast.com site. But, it's a strategy where I talk about, you're not going to make any money the first month. You're actually going to lose money, but you're setting yourself up for the future. If you're very limited on cash flow, you really can't do that, right? You got to try to start making profit right away. So you got to make damn sure that your product research is awesome and that you've got a solid product. You're like very sure that this is going to be a good product. And then you're going to have to try to make profit right off the bat. So you're going to be, you're going to have $1,000. Okay. You're going to have, let's say 300 units of product. I think less than that, it becomes really difficult. And if you have $1,000, 300 units, you're talking about less than $4 per unit. And that's production cost, shipping it from, let's say, China to the US to you, wherever you're at, and then reshipping it from yourself to Amazon. So you've got to factor all that in. So it gets really tight, right? Is this making sense? I hope I know I'm talking about a lot of stuff here.
Yeah, that's one of the things to consider is 300 units for $1,000. That's 333 landed cost.
Yeah.
So at that point, we're definitely breaking one of the rules that we always talk about of trying to keep the cost a little bit higher, because you're gonna have more competition unless you do your research very, very well.
Yeah. And we talk about that, right? We are like, if you don't want to be in a very competitive market, then you've got to find those products that you're buying at, let's say, $10 per unit, because you're going to turn around and sell them for $40, $45, $50. So now you're buying a product, as Guy just mentioned, landed. Okay, that's with all the costs associated. You're paying your customs, your shipping, you're getting it here, you're inspecting it, you're reboxing it and sending it off to Amazon. So you're probably buying the product for, I don't know, what, $1.50 maybe, or something like that. So it's going to be most likely a cheaper product that could potentially have a lot of people that are jumping into this market. And I know this is a Q&A. We're trying to get through some questions quickly, but this is a really complicated subject. And it sucks because, Guy, I want everybody to have a chance to come in and make money doing this. But if you come in with only $500, it's like, man, it's like throwing somebody in an MMA ring with like 2 days of training and saying, all right, you tapping them on the back saying, you're going to do okay, buddy. You got a good chance. Yeah,
I think it's definitely worth spending time on this question, even if it's the only question we get to, because it gets asked so often, and I've heard many people say, yeah, you can start with $500. Yeah, you might be able to start with $500, but starting doesn't necessarily mean succeeding.
Right. Well, let's do the math. Maybe I don't have the calculator in front of me, but let's do this real quick. If you start off with 300 products, and let's just say that you can make a $10 profit, okay? We're talking about a profit on each unit, and that's after pay-per-click costs, that's after every cost, okay? So you've got a $10 profit. Let's assume that the first month, we started with 300 units, 50 of them are gone, you make no profit on because those were your review-generating copies or pieces of inventory. So you have 250 to start with to make $10 on. So now you sell them all out in the first month, okay? You just made $2,500. So you started with $2,000. Now you're at $2,500. Okay. Now you have to order inventory. You're out of inventory at this point. So you got to order inventory, and then you've got to wait for the inventory to arrive. And you're actually because you're out of inventory, you have to order them express air. So it's more expensive. So that cuts into your margins as well. And then, again, we didn't establish an actual price, but let's just say with the $2,500, if you could get 300 before, you would be at, what would it be? It'd be another quarter more, right, Guy? Am I doing my math right?
Yes.
Yeah, so a quarter more would be...
Yeah, 375. Well, actually, you're probably going to be getting about the same, assuming that you did, you shipped it by boat the first time, and then you're reordering express air.
Well, but
you might have it.
That's absolutely, yeah, that's true for sure. But I don't think the newbie is going to order on a boat the first time. If they're starting out, they're 99% of the chance going to use express air. So,
all right.
So let's just assume that. I know there's a lot of assumptions here. But let's just say, okay, so now the order is going to be 25% larger. So we've gone from 300 units to
375.
Yeah, exactly, 375. So 375, now you don't have any review copies, right? Because we've already established that. That's all set. So now you're making $10 profit. We're assuming nothing changes. Now you're going to make $3,750, okay, when it's all said and done. Now you can apply that. We're assuming you are reinvesting 100% of it. So now you're almost at a point where you're now doubling, going into potentially month 3, doubling the amount of inventory, very close to anyways, that you started with. And you just kind of keep repeating this. But remember, there's always going to be that delay from the time you run out of inventory till the time you get new inventory. And then there's a lot of other problems, guys, in terms of while you're not listed, right, your product is suppressed because you're out of inventory, where you lose your rankings, and there's just some drawbacks to doing that. So it's a difficult climb, I guess you could say. So you actually almost want to be ordering smaller amounts and then having them shipped on a regular basis, like almost every week. So you have inventory coming in. So that's kind of the simplistic way I look at it. And I would suggest that to probably, make sure you have some sort of income, whether you're working full time and you're just doing this on the side, so that you don't have to pull any money out of those profits. Otherwise, it's going to take forever, right? Maybe you're married and your spouse can support you, or you have some kind of infrastructure in place. So that's my method, I would say. Find the money right away. Get private label going. There's some drawbacks, obviously. If you borrow it from your family and the whole thing tanks, then you've got to deal with the guilt of that. But it's the fastest way of doing it, I think. Now, Guy has a very good option as well. It's a totally separate thing. So I'd like for you to kind of explain that one.
Yeah. One of the things that I'm hesitant about is recommending somebody to go in debt. And I know that you and I have spoken about this, and there's, according to, I don't know, I think you don't follow Robert Kiyosaki, the author of Rich Dad Poor Dad, but he talks about good debt and bad debt. So this debt, this $2,000 debt that you acquire, would actually qualify as good debt because it's getting invested into an asset that will potentially produce a profit. So from that point, you're fine. But if you're not comfortable going into business by borrowing money, and you probably should get a little bit comfortable with that, because that's typically going to happen. The other option is to use the $500 and go in a different route. We've talked about retail arbitrage before, and we actually had Steve Raken and Jameson Filippi on the podcast, and we talked about how you can do some retail arbitrage or thrifting to build up capital. And I think that's a good solution. I would actually say, until you can build, I don't know, maybe a $2,000 bankroll, maybe you shouldn't jump into private label right away. And I know that that's almost pushing away some of our audience, but hopefully you see our transparency. We're not trying to guide you into the light of private label at all costs. We want the best for you, and that's why I think it's a good idea to tell you it's not going to take $500. It might take around $2,000 to get started. So there's apps, for example, OfferUp. You can sell stuff locally on OfferUp, and I've actually done stuff like this in the past, where I used to go to garage sales, thrifting. I enjoyed it a lot, not thrifting, but sourcing. And there was one occasion in which I went out with maybe a couple $100 in my pocket, and I get to this house, and they have a full collection of unopened Lego Star Wars. And if you know Legos, you know they hold their value, they sell well. And it was the last day of the estate sale. Everything was half off, and it was already priced competitively. So I didn't have the money in my pocket. So that's kind of equivalent to I don't have the money to invest. So I put that on a credit card. It was, I think, like $1,200 worth of Legos. And I sent that in to Amazon and doubled my money in maybe a couple months. There was another occasion, I spoke about it before, when I I sourced a whole garage full of books, literally a garage full of books. And that one I paid cash. It was, I don't know, I believe it was $500 that I paid for that garage full of books, and I flipped it for 2-3 times the investment. So be creative. If you don't have the money to start private label, you have to decide how bad do you want it. And if you want it really bad, you're gonna have to find a way to make it happen. Because trust me, coming up with the money is probably one of the easiest part of starting a business.
Right.
So if you cannot figure out how to come up with an additional $1,500, maybe you're not cut out for this. If you're struggling over making that initial investment, no disrespect, but get a job. This might not be the thing for you. I often hear people saying, "Oh my gosh, I'm fed up. I've worked a 48-hour work week this week." That sounds like vacation for you and I, right, Manny?
Yeah. I mean, when you're hustling, 40 hours is a luxury. That's nice.
Yeah. So it's just a mindset kind of thing. If you are trying to start a business and $500 is all you have, just think of it as the first problem that you have to solve with your business. How are you going to turn that 500 into 2,000 so you can quickly get started with private label? Because private label is a huge opportunity. But I wouldn't, Daniel, I wouldn't let that stop you. I think you should just hustle, turn that $500, double it, go to garage sales, go sourcing, Craigslist is kind of difficult to find good deals on, but you can do arbitrage locally. You don't have to go to Amazon to do arbitrage. You can even do service arbitrage. If you find somebody that that's a great logo artist, but they're horrible at marketing their services, you go find them a client and get a commission. Do something to get that seed capital.
Yeah, that's a really good answer. Find a way, and then at some point, learn everything you can, but at some point, just stop learning and get out there and roll up your sleeves and jump into it. So if that's starting with $500, then so be it. I think you're going to need a little bit more to make it easier, but it doesn't mean you can't actually make it up to the top of that hill by starting out with less.
Yeah. Just look for the reason why. If your reason why is strong enough, you'll get it going, man.
Cool. All right. I think that was a good answer. Key, your answer. My answer is okay. Yours is great.
No, man. I think it's 2 point of views, and I think they're both valuable. How are we doing on time? Do we have time for another one?
It's your call, man. We're definitely over 20 minutes. We always do 2. Do you want to do a second one?
Let's go for it. Yeah.
Okay.
If you're listening to this and you're running out of time, you can always come back to this question. But let's deliver what we always do.
Okay. Perfect.
So the next one.
Whoa! Hang on, Guy. Whoa!
Come on, we're running out of time here.
There's always time for Manny's question of the day for Guy. This is question number 2. You cannot skip these, Guy. This is a very serious question. Are you ready?
Shoot.
It's a little easier than the last one that stumped you. Okay? This is one that for sure you can answer, I think. Where were you, Guy, 3 hours ago, and do you think somebody was stalking you?
I don't know. Now you have me freaked out. I'm looking over my shoulder here. I was in my home office. And if somebody's stalking me, then I'm worried.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
I made that one simple. All right, let's move on. Next question. Question numero dos.
Question numero dos comes from Marius. It says, I found a product I think I want to sell. On Alibaba, the price is good, but then I noticed there are about 20 other sellers selling the exact product on Amazon. Let's just say it's a men's gray wallet with a skull on it.
With a what?
Skull.
A skull?
With a...
Okay, a skull. Like crossbones, skull.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
got it.
Remember, English is second language. I have an accent.
Sorry, go ahead.
All right. I don't think Marius has an accent. I do.
Okay.
All right. So it says all 20 listings are exactly the same, except that they say it's a different brand. The photos don't even show a brand on the product itself. It's just a gray wallet with a white skull. How? All right. I should rehearse the pronunciation before I go into this.
You're doing perfect. Go ahead. All right, now we know.
Right.
It's a skull. It's a wallet with a white skull.
Yeah. So how is this possible? I thought for private label we needed to add our logos to the product. If I have understood some of your earlier podcasts. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I mean, looks like he has found something that there's like 20 sellers selling the exact same product. So what would you do, Mike?
Okay. I guess we've got to ask some questions so that we're not just making assumptions. So we're assuming that you've done the research, and even with the 20 sellers, which isn't out of the question, there could be 100 sellers selling the product, doesn't matter. But as long as the top sellers are crushable, I like to call it, right? You can go in and just crush that market because they have the specific criteria that we look for, right? They're not overly crowded with reviews. Their price points are good. It's not just one company that's selling the majority of this particular product. And so on, right? We've done podcasts on this, and we could talk about this at length. And this particular Q&A is already long enough. So we're going to just assume it's good. And if I understand this correctly, Guy, he's saying that everybody's product is exactly the same. Like there's literally no branding on the product. His example is it's a wallet, a leather wallet, I guess, with a white skull, and they're all the same. And but somebody in the title, maybe they're saying it's the Biker Z skull wallet, and the next one is whatever. It's a different brand. Mm-hmm. Okay, so his question was, how is that possible? Well, first of all, that's what private label is, right? I mean, you go out, you source a product, and you can literally create your own ASIN for it as long as you've got a brand. You can literally slap that logo on the bag or the box, or I guess you really don't even need the logo technically, and you can put it out there. But I would highly suggest that if you're going to enter this market, because there's all 20 sellers have the same product, why don't you actually put your logo on there? Come up with a really cool little brand, right, Guy? And stick it on there. I was
thinking that sounds like a great opportunity to differentiate yourself from the competition and stand out.
Yeah, there was a fantastic interview I just did with Kevin King, and he talks about how he's able to sell his products for 2 to 3 times the amount of all his competitors because he spends the extra $1 or whatever it costs on the packaging to make it look amazing, right? It's kind of like he referred to it as Apple's products, right? When you get an Apple iPhone, how awesome the packaging is. Not only the outside of the box itself, but the inside and the way they put everything. So you could have this wallet, with your logo, your brand, whatever it is that you've got going, and then make the packaging itself. These other guys are probably sending it in like a poly bag. You could have a nice little thing that you've created for 50 cents or 75 cents, a nice little box that has engraving and stuff, and it just gives that perceived value. And if all the other companies that have their listings are just showing their wallet, show your super awesome box there, kind of like opened up with the wallet there, and just giving it that differentiation, making it look really good. That's what I would do.
Yeah, I agree. I think if all the numbers look good and even the number one seller has done absolutely nothing to stand out, then you're going to be golden if you actually try. Sounds like these other guys are not really trying.
Yeah, and again, we don't know all of the details of this particular wallet, and this was your example. It's probably not a wallet, but using the wallet example, once you have your logo done and you've got your prototype, and assuming you have samples with that, it's always good to use products when you're doing photos outside of your primary photo. Have these products actually being shown as being used, right? So show somebody having it, they're pulling a credit card out of it, or they're doing something, it's actually in use. If the other guys don't have that, it drives your conversion up. It just improves your entire listing. So a lot of little things you can do, but yeah, Guy, I think if he's done his homework and his research and everything looks good, and they're all the same, I would say that's actually a benefit for him.
Yeah, you have a chance to kill it on this niche, Marius.
Crush it. Yes, for sure.
Crush it.
All right, guys. Guy, anything you want to add to that?
No.
Okay.
I think we're good to go. It's been long enough. I appreciate you guys listening in, tuning in. Don't forget to check out the Periscope. Don't forget to rate the podcast. If you love it, go to iTunes and give us a rating. And join us on the Facebook group. Go to ampmpodcast.com and look at the sidebar. There's a lot of cool links there. And we look forward to interacting with you guys.
Yeah, and just so in case this is your first podcast, I do a daily Periscope, so almost daily anyways. And just install the Periscope app and then do a search for Manny Coates, my first and last name, and boom, I should be first listing. Follow me, and then you'll get notified every time I do a video each day, and you can participate and ask questions, and it's just awesome. But otherwise, as Guy said, please join us in our Facebook group. Guy and I are in there all the time. We'd love to interact with you guys.
All right, the links are on the sidebar of the main website, guys.
Cool.
For the Periscope and for the group. Thank you again. Have an awesome day. Thanks for tuning in.
Take care.
All right. Bye, guys.
You've been listening to the AM/PM podcast hosted by Manny Coates. For more information, insider tools, and to get the resources mentioned in this episode, visit ampmpodcast.com.